Good evening. This is the Board of Education special meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on July 23, 2018 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tappan to Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Could you take a roll call, please, Mr. Stice?
Ms. Barone?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Mizio?
Here.
Mr. Fahey? Mr. Hayek?
Here.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Martins?
Here.
Mr. Morrison? Dr. Shabilsky?
Here.
And Mr. Fallon.
Yes. Please stand for the national anthem. It's been a long day. I apologize. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I can assure you, you would not want to hear me sing the national anthem. Before our first opportunity for public comment tonight, there have been a number of posts in the Warren Township Community Forum. And I have a statement. Mr. Morrison keeps repeating on the Warren Township Community Forum that the board voted down the resolution to spend the money last week. No, it did not. Mr. Morrison and one other board member voted down these resolutions. A majority of the entire board a majority of the entire 10-member Board of Education voted in favor of the resolutions. The vote was 6-2 in favor of adopting the resolutions. Mr. Morrison did not argue on July 17th that we should not hold a vote because not all of the board members were present. The resolutions were not adopted at the July 17th, 2018 meeting because the state requires a 2/3 majority of the entire board to adopt such resolutions. In other words, 7 of the 10 members would have to vote in favor of adopting the resolutions. With only 8 of our 10 members present at the July 17th meeting, adopting the resolution would have required that 7 of the 8 board members present at the meeting vote in favor of the adoption. That did not happen. 6 of the 8 members present that evening did vote in favor of adopting the resolutions. The district did not know until Friday, July 13th, that it would be receiving the $224,010 in additional state aid beyond what we were originally told back in March we would receive for the next school year. Let's look at why the administration has recommended using the $224,010 to fund the project for air conditioning this particular gym. This gym was, and gym 7-8 we're referring to, this gym was to be air conditioned in the 2004 to 2006 $42 million renovation of the high school. So the HVAC units installed on the roof for this gym have the chillers necessary to air condition the gym, an expensive part of the overall air conditioning project. However, when that project ran out of money before it was finished, and the board then came back to the public for an additional $3 million, the scope of that renovation was reduced. Included in the things removed from it were the controls, wiring, and certain other work, which would have completed the air conditioning of that gym back then. Additionally, as pointed out by a former teacher at the high school on the Warren Township Community Forum, Gym 7-8 regularly gets quite hot. Not only is the gym used for AP testing in May, it is also used throughout the school year for physical education classes, and it is used in the summer months by programs going on at the high school. I would also note that even with the additional $224,010 in state aid for the upcoming school year, the total state aid we will be receiving is still far less than the state aid that the district received back in 2007, because this state has been underfunding annual state aid to our district for over 10 years. Some people on the forum have also asked how much the taxpayers would be receiving if this money is given back as tax relief. The tax bill on an average assessed value Warren house would be $10.26 lower. It would be $9.03 lower for an average house in Watchung and $7.75 lower for an average house in Long Hill. In his July 23 post, Mr. Morrison also says this money is in addition to another $120,000 in unexpected aid that the district has already reserved. It is not true that the $120,000 in aid which he refers to was unexpected. The district was told back in March the total amount of state aid that we were to receive for the upcoming school year, and that amount included the $120,000 to which Mr. Morrison refers. However, at that time, Governor Murphy's proposed budget also called for a variety of new taxes to fund school and other priorities to the entire state. As a result, both our administration and our Board of Education were concerned that the actual amount we might receive once the state budget was finalized in June would be less than the amount that we were promised in March. That is why the board reserved $120,000 of that amount, so that we would not have to scramble to find revenue if the state shortchanged us, as it has done in the past, when revenue did not keep pace with the governor's promises. Mr. Morrison also stated in his original post, in an unprecedented move, the administration and board president have called for a special meeting for this Wednesday evening, that's tonight, to revote on something the board has already taken action on, paren, hold the funds in reserve, close paren. First, I, as board president, have called this special meeting. Mr. Morrison also acknowledged to me that he agreed that I have the right to call such a special meeting. The administration acted at my direction in posting the notice of the meeting. Second, calling a special meeting to vote on a matter is not unprecedented. Even revoting on a matter previously discussed is not unprecedented. Third, the board did not take action with regard to these funds at the July 17th meeting. As noted above, 7 votes are required to adopt budget resolutions such as these, and neither position received 7 votes because 2 members of our board were not present. An additional requirement from the state in this matter is that any resolution with respect to either appropriating and spending or returning to the taxpayers this $224,010 has to be adopted before August 1st. And so, because 2 members could not be present that night, and we had not learned of the need for a vote prior to August 1 until 4 days before the July 17th meeting, I said at that meeting that if there were not at least 4 votes against appropriating and spending the money, that I would consider holding a special meeting to again consider the issue before August 1. Mr. Morrison objects to the special meeting. I have called tonight's special meeting to see if adoption of the resolutions can obtain the votes of 7 members of our Board of Education before the July 31 deadline imposed by the state. We'll now open up public comment. Anyone would like to address the board on this issue? Please come to the podium, state your name, the town you're from, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name's Phil Macamuli. I live in Warren. If you don't pass the resolution, what happens?
As I think was explained at the last meeting, if the resolutions, if neither resolution in favor of appropriating the money and spending it, nor a resolution granting it back as tax relief obtains 7 votes, neither would be passed. And unless there's another meeting between now and August 1st, what would happen is the money would be revenue that the district would receive, but it wouldn't be able to spend it on any particular project, so it would stay in the budget until the end of the 2018-2019 school year, and at that point, it would likely go back as tax relief.
I see. Okay. I mean, that's pretty much my question. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? We'll now close this up. Oh, I'm sorry.
Joanne Pshbilski, Warren. I was wondering what the priority list to use the money, what else is on your list? Instead of air conditioning gym, What about the security of the school? I would think your priority would be the safety of the school. And I'm just wondering if there's something in the line that it could be spent on towards. That's all.
We have money in this upcoming budget for additional security improvements beyond what we already have. And it was the recommendation of the administration that since we do have those things already in the budget, we looked at a variety of capital-type projects here, and frankly, one of the things to look at was what you could get done for this relatively small amount of money.
I think that's about right, and we also, we are already in the process of, we have allocated $1.2 million for the renovation of the gym 7-8 locker rooms, and that actually is a safety issue that we're looking to address. And so, because we already have that project in process, in terms of looking at all of the different projects on our list, doing this now in combination with that project, based on the information that our architects have given us, and the previous, I guess, our previous experience with these types of projects, it would be the most efficient to bid this project now as part of the larger project, because we feel it will cost a lot less than if we were to do it in the future. So that was one of the other considerations.
Okay. Close public comment, action items,
Can we
resolutions and
discuss this,
discussion.
can we discuss it prior, or can we discuss it after? How do you want to handle it since?
I think usually
Usually we
move
move
it,
and then
Okay.
make it second, then, yeah.
does somebody want to move it?
I'll move D1 and D2.
Second.
Okay, discussion, Bruce?
The first discussion or the first question I have for protocol standpoint, if this gets voted down tonight, what would stop a board member at the next meeting making a motion to rescind this?
Gets voted up.
If this gets passed tonight, what would stop a board member at the next meeting from making a motion to rescind this approval?
The short answer is, I don't know the answer to that question with the state requirement that the budgetary resolutions, they told us. I don't know where it is in
Okay.
statute that says we have to do it by August 1st. My understanding is they gave us the August 1st deadline because towns want to send out the tax bills.
Okay.
But whether or not that impacts whether somebody can rescind it, frankly, I can ask the board counsel because I don't know, Bruce. I don't-
Okay. And my
I don't
only,
have a problem asking.
and my only comment is what you stated earlier. If the money does go back into the general fund, it's not like the district is giving up the money. The district could still allocate that at a later date for a project, if it is security or a tennis court or basically the AC. I just think if we could wait another meeting where you could have the full board and have everybody vote and get everybody's opinion on it, instead of personally calling for a special meeting to take advantage of people that might be here or might not be here, I don't agree with. When we had discussed moving things in the past and people couldn't make meetings, and the consensus was, well, if they're not here, it voted, it passed, it is what it is. So personally, I'm not in agreement with just holding a special meeting to get the vote that you need. When the money is going to the district, it's just not going to this project. And I will ask, when did this project become of an immediate urgency? Has this air condition been on the long-range facility plan? It has.
Yes,
It's
we've
on
discussed
now.
it in operations, and operations has brought it to this board before.
Yeah, it's on the plan that the board will eventually get from the architect.
Eventually
But
get.
it's been on the project list in operations already.
Sounded like it was on the project list in 2004.
It's
It's
been there
been,
for a while, but let me go a
recently.
step further. All the gyms, the air in all the gyms is on the plan. It's been there forever. Just go to the gym in late May or early June, and you'll know what I mean. Any one of the three. 3, 4 is where the kids eat lunch, and that's tough. 5, 6 can be tough. 1, 2 has it. They did put that in, which is right, that's that auxiliary gym, but 7, 8 never had it. We wanted to add it after Superstorm Sandy ripped the gym apart, but we couldn't get it through insurance because it was an upgrade.
Okay.
It's also my understanding, I'm going to ask the business administrator to comment on it, that you're not correct, that this is a situation where we would have the revenue and could decide after August 1st to use it for some other project. As I believe the business administrator explained to us last time, this type of use of funds that go into general revenue is considered extraordinary, and I'll let him address what hoops would have to be addressed in order for us to then allocate it to a project in this school year.
Yeah, during the school year, you would have to have unanticipated revenue, and you can use that in the last 3 months of the school year, but you need commissioner approval, and you literally got to have all your budget lines spent. So it's difficult to get that approval. The only other way is if it lapses into surplus, and in June, if we appropriate it to a reserve account to be used in the future. But we can't really, you really can't use it in April, May, and June unless there's an extraordinary happening, because it's very difficult to get the commissioner to approve that. I've done it before, I know. It's just, they go through every line item in your budget, and if you have $50 here, they want you to spend that 50 that you didn't spend, and they will go through every single line. So it's very, very difficult, and you need almost an emergency. Now, if it lapses into surplus during the month of June, I may recommend if we have funds left over, that I would say, okay, put it in capital reserve for future use. That would be the only other circumstance.
So a question I would have, do you have enough money in your current capital project fund to fund this project?
With the air conditioning?
Yes, sir.
It's hard to say that, Bruce, because it depends on the bids. It's just, anything can happen between now and when we put this thing out to bid. I would like to think, I have a great estimate from our architect. I would like to think this $200,000 would help fund the air conditioning, but I can't tell you with a degree of certainty that it will happen. But, it's based on professional estimates. You've got to hope that it happens.
No, but I'm asking, do you have the money currently?
Without this.
I'm sorry?
You're saying without this 220?
Without this 220,000 additional dollars allocated for the project, is there enough money in the capital reserve fund on top of the other projects that you have planned already for this year to cover the additional air conditioning project if it was to happen?
Oh, yeah, we have reserve money, yeah.
But then we'd have to cut out another project that we're going to look to do.
Or fund it at a later date?
Right.
Problem with funding it at a later date is it could actually be more expensive, because after they're done with the locker rooms and everything's closed up, then you have to go back and rip it out and put it in.
Sure, I was talking about another project within the long-range facility plan, move it or shuffle the deck a little bit that has
You
been done
can,
in the past.
but don't forget, that's a board resolution that has to take place and the board has to vote.
And that's why I'm just thinking we would want all the members here for a discussion of that magnitude. That's all.
How'd you know I was going to ask
You
questions?
had that look.
I had the look. So I'm going to ask the questions in subtly different ways than Bruce was trying to address. So our operations committee has seen this line item. We've asked in the past for a prioritization of different projects in terms of what's most to least important. Where does this project fit in that list of the line items that every year we say we don't have enough money for?
It's, in a draft form, it's a priority two.
Thinking.
There's a priority one list, and then there's a priority two. This would be the two next.
So what priority one things are we giving up to fund this and to use this money for this particular project? With the understanding that there may not be enough money to do the priority one
That-
things, which I get.
That's really the issue. There's a number of priority one issues that we would like to address. Some are the classroom unit ventilators, to change all of those. That's extensive. We do want to change all the lighting, but we think we can do that through an ESIP program. So that, that's one of our priority ones. There are security things that we would like to install. Those are larger, and that's going to be part of that long-range plan. But that one, we would like to tackle those, but I think they're going to cost more than what this is. Just to give you a few. I mean, there's other ones as well. I don't want to get into the athletic ones because I'll get everybody crazy over that, but there are fields we would like to do. I wouldn't call them priority ones. We can live without that, but the athletic folks will tell you they're priority ones.
So it's then an accurate interpretation that this choice was more based on the dollar amount, which would not fulfill any of the priority one
Yeah.
costs, but it does happen to meet a priority two cost.
And a bang for your buck, I think you'd have to say as well.
Essentially, the timing of it is
That was
good with the project because I think I can get a lower price for the
Sure.
HVAC.
Next question, what alternatives in appropriating the state aid were considered besides the air conditioning and return to the taxpayer and just putting it in capital reserve, if any?
You can't put it in reserve. They wouldn't allow that. Yeah, I can only do that in June. But no, it was mainly the air conditioning, because I talked to the architect and our building and grounds folks, and we immediately came up with that, only because of the timing of it. You know, I got this $200,000 at a time where I'm gonna bid this thing mid-year, so I think I'm gonna get lower cost, and I'm gonna have a contractor here. So generally, when that happens, I do get better pricing. So that's kind of why, that was our thinking behind that. But that was our main one, and it was almost immediate. We thought, okay, that's a good one, and it fits within that. Because we looked down the list of things, and a couple of other things that, one of the larger projects that did come up was the ceramics room. The ceramics room came up because we want to do a lot with that, but I don't want to go into too much detail. We're actually, it's part of a larger plan on what we'd like to do with that. So we didn't want to put money into something that we're going to change in a year. But that did come up.
Next question, if no resolution passes with 7 votes, what happens to the money?
So then it's,
I think I know the answer to that. I just
Yeah,
want to
so
be
then
clear
it's-
hearing it from you.
okay, so it's unanticipated revenue. So it just it'll just pass through at the end of the fiscal year to either surplus, which could be tax relief, it could be put it in reserves, just depending on what else goes on this year.
So multiple options
Correct.
for it if no resolution passes.
Right, it's almost like, if you think about it, if I estimated rental revenue of 100,000 and we received 200,000, so I have a surplus of 100, so that same scenario.
Gotcha. And is it correct from your previous answers that we have more than this 224,000 and change money in capital reserve currently? I mean, I know the answer
Correct.
to that, but.
Yeah, so we're over $1 million.
Okay. So I guess my comments will be thus. One, I think there is a frustration that you may be hearing from some board members about process. And I think while I looked into parliamentary procedure and rules of order, there is nothing that precludes a resolution from being brought again that was not voted up at a previous meeting. So all of this is in order. But I think people feel frustrated and disenfranchised if, when things don't get voted in a certain way, that they're just brought back up again when the seats on the deck have been shuffled and different people are there. So it's just something to keep in mind, because there are clearly some board members that feel that it's not right. While again, it is within parliamentary procedure to do it, I think there are a couple of examples that board members know of where comments were made about decisions being voted on where other members have a difference of opinion, and the comment being made that, well, they're not here to vote and we're voting and we're not going to vote on it again. Yet, this is an example where the opposite is happening and the vote doesn't go and it's being voted on again. So if you're going to treat things equitably, the same process should happen each time as opposed to different times. So with respect to this specific resolution, my comment would be, there is logic in Tim's recommendation on a couple of fronts. One is the fact that we are coincidentally working on this, and so we can get that same contractor to get us a more competitive bid theoretically to get this done at a cheaper rate. So that is something that's attractive. It's also the summertime, so it's a good time to take care of that. And also, I assume that there are fewer projects going on, so another reason why it would be cheaper. It is on our list of things to do, so that also makes sense. And I thought about the cost of returning the money, and there is some cost that's involved in it, and does $10.26, and obviously that's the average home, and not everybody has the average home, so that number could be significantly different from that, but it's still a fairly small number. I recall when I was on the K-8 board, supporting when we got similar extraordinary aid, that I was a strong proponent of returning it to the taxpayers, which we did, although there was some heated discussion about doing so. The counter argument in this case is we've got a budget, we have money that we expect to get, we got extra money that we didn't expect to get, and so why wouldn't we share that back with the taxpayers? Because we have worked within our budget each year, and this was money that we were not expecting, and would it not be reasonable to give it back to them? So to Bruce's angle, the thought that I have is, since there are disenfranchised members of the board who feel that revoting on something that's been voted on before is not really fair, we have capital reserve that can afford to pay for this, and we have future opportunity to allocate this money to capital reserve, to returning it to the taxpayers, to something else. Why would not a reasonable compromise that satisfies everybody be, if this is an important enough project that you're advocating for, to use capital reserve money to pay for it now, put this money aside, and then when everybody is here, we can discuss how we want to use it in the next fiscal year.
Craig, I'm going to address the point regarding the revoting of the special meeting. We were told on Friday, July 13th, about this additional aid. It was either that day or the following Monday that we were told that we had to vote to either appropriate that or give it back to the taxpayers or do nothing by August 1st. When we didn't have 10 members at the only regular meeting we had scheduled between those two dates, I said to the other board members while we were here that if there weren't 4 people who were going to vote against appropriating this money and putting it into the budget, that I would anticipate calling a special meeting between now and then. And to see if there are 7 votes, and if there aren't, there aren't. But to me, it was not only reasonable, but we had extraordinary circumstances that, in my mind, justified bringing this back the following week.
I don't disagree with anything you said. It's well within your right to do so. There's nothing parliamentary that precludes this from being voted on again, so that's not my issue. My issue is trying to figure out, how do you satisfy everybody so that they feel like their voice is being heard? And so that's why I suggested an option that may or may not fly, but may satisfy the majority, if not everyone.
Greg, I think in a very, very important distinction between, say, voting for ordinary things that we vote on in regular working meetings versus this is that you need a simple majority to pass something, right, of the members present. You need a simple majority. So it could be, in a sense, if we had 6 board members, a quorum, right, you could have 4 people that vote yes, and 2 people who say no, and the other 4 who are not present might have voted no,
Sure.
Yet it still would pass. This, by being absent, you're already a no, even though we may have another member who's not been in town for either of these meetings. He may be a yes vote, but he's not been here to even, so it's an automatic no. Very different than any other typical vote that we do. This probably falls under a 5% category of vote, if not less, given these types of circumstances.
I completely agree with you on that point. I would point out, though, that there is a subtle difference. If this money would disappear, then that's a huge issue. But the money doesn't disappear, meaning if there is no action taken, the money just falls into the budget. So there's actually not a requirement to take an action. But there's a timeliness in perhaps using that money in an effective way, which I understand was why the recommendation was brought before us. And it makes sense to me, but at the same time, is there a different path that would allow the same thing to happen in the same time period, but allow a better discussion with everybody here about whether we should use that money in a different way, meaning the state aid that's come back?
Can I just understand, what you're suggesting is that we take the money out of capital reserve to pay for this air conditioning. Then this money, it doesn't pass, so this money goes in these
Unanticipated.
unanticipated, which at the end of the school year, if there's no extraordinary expense that you can apply it to or need to apply it to, you would then come to us, Tim, and say, in June, and say, we can either put this in surplus, we can put this in capital reserve, or we can give this back to the taxpayers? Is that what would happen?
Yeah, but that's very theoretical.
Okay, so why is it
A lot can
theoretical?
because a lot can happen between now and June.
Such as, what do you mean? Like, so what would your?
Hurricane.
'Cause to me, that just sounds, okay, so then we wouldn't have any money in capital
Right,
reserve.
right.
We'd have 225 less.
Right.
So that's the rainy day fund,
Right.
the capital reserve fund. So you're saying, I don't want to, is it your recommendation then not to touch that? That's what you're saying? I don't
I
want to
thi-
touch that if I don't have to because it's a rainy day fund?
To Dr. Shabilsky's path, it ends up the same thing.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Essentially, it's just more complicated, that's all.
Right.
It's,
So I don't understand, if it's just the same thing, what's the difference? Why
well,
is that?
essentially, it's more, the path you recommend is more complicated, because then a lot of things could happen. We don't know, the capital reserve, and listen, if it's not there, I got problems. We all got problems, but, it'll be there, but you have to just jump through different hoops to use it, that's all. This is easy. This is a resolution, done, you move on.
To Tim, can you take capital reserve money and use it to offset tax revenue?
Not really. It's for capital projects in your long-range facility plan, that's it.
I knew the answer to the question.
Oh, okay.
So, but the reason to ask the
Totally.
question, the reason to ask the question is to answer your question. So,
Yeah.
by doing the convoluted pathway, that money is still up for grabs in multiple directions, whether
Right.
it's the hurricane that hits us in 6 months that we didn't expect, whether it's we're returning it to the taxpayer, whether there's some other
And when we
project.
vote to return it to the taxpayer at the end of June, how many people do we need to vote for yes to that?
That's just simple majority. That's different.
So the difference in these two pathways is a multi-directional amount of money,
But in the meantime, we've
That
reduced our
everyone can-
capital, we
We have.
reduced our capital reserve.
which we can replenish with that money in June.
Yeah.
So
Which would be the right thing to do, right? You don't want a small rainy day fund, do you?
That's what we.
well, the definition of small and big varies from person to person.
Heck,
We heard that it was over $1 million, so what's the right amount for the rainy day fund? And if this money can still go into that
it's probably
place,
too small as it is, frankly.
but if this money could still go into that place, then does this alternative path satisfy the recommendation? Does it satisfy the board members that are disenfranchised? And gives us another opportunity in the future to discuss how to allocate that money?
Right, and I guess my position is I'm not the administrator who runs this building. We have them, and they're saying that makes them uneasy, at least, otherwise they would have recommended it, I suspect.
Or was this,
Who
was
is
this project?
disenfranchised, Greg?
Well, I think you made very specific reference to one person who's disenfranchised.
Who has a no vote tonight?
Correct.
By not
Correct.
being
He had a no
here,
vote the
he
other
has
night.
no
Correct.
vote.
Correct. I think I personally don't like the process of revoting on things, especially when I hear that, when I ask for things to be delayed so that more people have an opportunity to add to the discussion to make a more educated decision, that is not honored, but this is. I'm not going to speak for you, but you can tell me if you feel that this process is
I mentioned it,
appropriate or not. I thought you said no,
I
but
mentioned it earlier, and when I had the conversation with Bob and even the administration earlier, I said, I'm not gonna change my vote. I do not agree on it, and that's my position.
It's a quick question, go back. I've been listening, and just maybe just give me some history on Mr. Stiles. How many times has the board had to use cap reserve for emergency products, like you said, after Superstorm Sandy, in the past, like, 10 years, let's say?
Emergency projects?
Yeah.
Well, we had two last year.
I'm trying to think. We did, I mean, I forgot what year the
Not to put you on the
hurricane-
spot, whatever you can think of, yeah.
Well, the hurricane we had to. That was a big deal. That was a lot of money.
What about
We
the
had to
whole
front
fire
it.
that you had?
We did it for that. But then,
But you get insurance
again,
money.
Yeah, I fronted with that, but then I get the insurance money back, so it goes back into reserve. Not too much, Freddie. I mean, we've used it to supplement a project. In other words, what I've been using capital reserve is we try to build it up, and then as the projects come into the budget, like with a 2% budget cap, just to go over the whole budget thing again, like I always do. So the increase is $500,000 in the budget. So that's 600, in that range, okay? So how do I fix a roof when I have to pay for teachers, healthcare increases, all those things? So that's why we try to put as much as we can into capital reserve, and then I can take it out during the budget time and allocate it to a project. So to answer your question, we don't just necessarily use it for emergency, but we've been using it pretty consistently for the past 7 or 8 years. In fact, to get out of the construction woes that we had way back in 2005, we built up a capital reserve to finish up that project. We were in bad shape. We were in real bad shape. We had a lot to do. We had a lawsuit pending, and we got through all that, and the building's, knock on wood, other than the air today, but is working fine. And we got through, we didn't have a lawsuit to defend. We settled, and everything worked out good because we built up that capital reserve. The turf project, we used our capital reserve, and we used state aid for that whole turf project. It wasn't an emergency, but heck, we didn't ask the taxpayers for any money on that thing over and above what we already have in our budget. So we've been using it to supplement all these capital projects because a 2% cap has just hamstrung us.
Of course.
And part of the issue that we brought up, some of the board members brought up last time, because we don't have the money to do some of these big, large capital projects, the idea of waiting 10 years and doing another referendum to do maintenance projects is kind of what boards are doing right now. So, yeah, that reserve is a key. Putting money in that reserve is key, and having that to use during the budget process is really important for boards.
Does the auditor weigh in on how much capital reserve when we do an audit?
They just audit the numbers. There's a restriction in terms of how much reserve you can have. There's forms, in October we fill them out. There's a long-range plan form that I fill out and give to the board.
But I just have these memories, and when the auditor comes in, they're like, if you didn't have money in capital reserve, they would be like, that's not good, you need money in capital, right?
Accountants, much like myself, we like lots of reserves.
Right.
Because we are paranoid people at heart. We're worried about everything going wrong, so we want as much in that reserve to supplement an issue that may arise. But you don't want too much.
Right.
Because then you're overtaxing your
Right.
your taxpayers, and that's no good either.
Right.
So, it's kind of a balance, and in about, I don't know, was it about 6 or 7 years ago, the districts who had reserves, the governor used that as a reason to take away your state aid. He said, oh, well, you have $5 million in reserves, so I'll take away your state aid. So, which I thought was really poor. So, if you're being responsible, you were penalized for it, but whatever, so be it. But what I'm saying is, the accounting people, much like myself, it is an absolutely important thing. It helps your bond rating, you get lower interest rates with that, it's a good thing to have.
Okay.
Yes, good.
So, I don't know why we would not spend down capital reserve, knowing that we can put this right back in it.
Well, we don't know, because we have to take a vote at the end of June, and it's a simple.
Correct. A simple majority,
And
and
my fear is that there may be people at that point in time.
who change their mind.
Who change their mind.
Then a compelling discussion and argument needs to be made at the table to change their mind.
And simply as well, the 2019 board can come up with a different budget that's 1.9% or 1.8% or 1.7%, and that could be done as well, and that's not a simple majority, so it's a more inclusive discussion. So that's a much more effective way to do it as part of the budget process next year.
Anyone else?
Where are we?
It's time for a vote.
There's a motion on the table that needs to be voted up or down. I guess, let me ask one last question. What, is it in order, depending on how this vote happens, to make a motion, assuming that it fails, to allocate that money from capital reserve from the floor?
I think I don't know that we can do that at a special meeting. I think we can put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Is that?
Yeah, I was kind of specific on how
Mark was clear that for the special meeting, you have to specifically say what the purpose is.
I was
and it's normally-
specific.
So I don't know if this would,
yeah,
if that would fall under the.
But then
yeah,
nothing would prevent it.
But nothing would prevent us from
From
putting it on the
happening the
agenda for
next
the
time.
August meeting.
right.
And Tim, if that was
That would
done,
probably be a better path, I would think, if
Yes.
you're gonna do that, yeah.
Tim,
Agreed.
if
There's no timeline.
if that was done and put on the agenda for the August meeting, what steps would have to be taken by the board to do that and then fit in with your bidding of the rest of this project?
It's just a resolution.
So we would be able to do that.
Yeah, we would make a resolution. In fact, I would probably, if the board, we should have a discussion in operations, I would think,
Yeah.
to go through. What you want to do is, I don't want to get the architect started on a project, and then to Bruce's point, there's another resolution a month from now saying, no, don't do that. You gotta, if you're gonna put it's like when the pool water's cold, you just jump in. Don't put your toe in the water and back up, because it's gonna cost us more money if we keep going back and forth like that.
Right, and if it's not approved today, then we're another month before you can put out a bid.
That's okay.
Okay.
The bid, we're looking at September, October anyway,
Okay,
I'm guessing. Although I know our principal's anxious to get it done sooner, but
We want to see it done by testing.
he wants to get it done by testing. So,
If we were going to do the air
Yeah,
conditioning and get
that-
the gym work done, so they're
it's-
not working on it during testing.
yeah, I don't think the August meeting would present a delay in the project, no, if you were to do that. I just don't want it to go back and forth, that's all. Like, you get into August and I say, yes, I gotta get the architect going eventually, soon, so it can't go back and forth. It's gotta be, so an operations meeting would probably be the best way to go about it, and then present it to the board, and knock on wood, if it works.
Okay? One more?
So, in consistency with parliamentary procedure, in speaking to this motion, even though I have told you that I support this project, which I do, I'm gonna vote this down. And the reason I'm gonna vote it down is because we still have the same option to pay for it, and we have more opportunity as a fuller board to discuss how that money gets allocated if we do the alternative path of taking this out of capital reserve at our next meeting without infringing upon the timing of this project.
Excuse me.
Okay, let's have the vote.
Okay, so we're voting on D1 and D2. Ms. Barone?
yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. DeMizio?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
No.
Dr. Shabilsky?
No.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Okay, so that's six, same as last time, 6-2. So that is a no. So that doesn't pass, I'm sorry.
So,
Motion
could we do
to-
quick other business before we adjourn? Yeah, I know it's not on there, but here's my suggestion, Pete. I'm annoyed by this. I think we need a board self-evaluation. I think we need a board retreat, because we are not all on the same page, and we need to get all on the same page on process. Please.
Motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.